Hello again. This is Stefan Senna. This is my channel, The Coherence Path, All Roads Lead to You. I'd like to add that, all the roads are authored by us as well. It may seem like our road takes us where we don't want to go, and it's true. There are experiences that we didn't particularly choose. We went to the grocery store looking for donuts and they were out. Somebody bought them before we got there. Or you have negative experiences. We all have those experiences. Or you make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Or you have a great, brilliant idea, and that might take you down a road that you didn't expect. But all the roads, I believe, lead back to ourselves to help us understand life and why we're here. I'm out here on the Clackamas River again fishing. I had a bite the other day. And I went to another location and I got a bite, and I even saw the fish swimming up toward my lure and then away, of course, after the fish bit it and discovered it wasn't what it wanted. And then I saw some fairly large fish out here, so there's hope that I could catch a fish. Maybe it'll be today. The river's a good metaphor. I've mentioned it on other videos, and I think again it's so fitting, because the subject I wanted to talk about today was humility. And I'm not wanting to speak about humility because I have a PhD in humility. I have all the steps that you can take to learn how to become humble. I've got a training program on how to become humble. I've got subliminal tapes and all these other things for you to listen to become more humble. No, I'm not wanting to talk about humility today for any of those reasons, which would be silly and ridiculous. I don't know if we can even get a PhD in humility, but I know that humility is something that when we are embodying humility, we sure feel different. If let's say we went out. Well, I remember when I was a kid in school, and I think a good example is volleyball. I went out for volleyball. I love volleyball. And I was pretty decent at it. I did all the skills adequately. I don't know if I did them into any spectacular fashion, but I could say that, at least for my own experience within myself, I felt very happy playing volleyball. Whether I had good skills at it or not, I enjoyed it. And what happens when you do something for a while, just like with life, you do something for a while, your ego becomes designed around it. If you start washing cars on the weekend for money, eventually after 2 or 3 weekends, you're like, hey, I'm pretty good at washing cars. I can wash cars better than most people, or I can wash cars just as good as anybody, or I wash cars so well that people come from miles around just to get me to wash their car. So we start developing this framework, this mental framework of how we're viewing ourselves based on that experience. And I remember playing volleyball, and after I figured it out, in the beginning it was a little awkward because other types of balls that I had hit or thrown up to that point, whether it's baseball, football, whatever, bowling, those were fairly heavy objects, and a volleyball is pretty light. It doesn't take much strength to hit a volleyball over the net. So if you're not careful, you could just knock it out of bounds. But after you get the basic skills down, how to the stance you want to have, and what position you like to play or whatever, then you, within your own mind, at least I did with mine, I'm like, yeah, I can play volleyball pretty well, And then, let's say you're playing volleyball and either somebody on the other side of the net is much better than you and they just slam the ball and it goes right past you, you can't catch it, and they score a point. Or you lose your footing while you're playing and you go flying and land on the floor flat on your face and get embarrassed, or you get injured, or or your ego goes so far as to think, well, everybody's going to wait for me, so you're always late to play volleyball, and eventually something happens. You show up and the coach says you're off the team because you're always late. Anyway, there's a lot of ways our minds can construct a framework through which we see ourselves as a volleyball player. And if we fall on our face on the floor and everybody's standing around giggling, it can be very embarrassing and humiliating. Now, in a fraction of a moment, we could go from being excited about playing the game and feeling confident and maybe even a little show-offish, like, yeah, I can't wait to get the ball, I'm going to really slam it and score a point. Or just a feeling of comfort, like, oh, I'm doing an adequate job, so is everybody else, I fit in with the team, we're all equal, and I feel like I'm doing my part. But then something happens, you fall on the floor, you get injured, somebody gets the ball past you, and then what happens? You get embarrassed or you feel bad. Because at some point, you were shown or you experienced that if you didn't perform well, you had less value. In any case, whatever causes that moment of humility, we have mechanisms within us where we talk ourselves through it, and okay, it was just one little mistake. I don't have to deal with that humility anymore. I can go back to being my confident self. But the humility I'm talking about is not the type that shows up just when you're embarrassed or you make a mistake or somebody gets the ball past you. That's a temporary, momentary humility. The humility that I've probably struggled with most of my life, and I still definitely, is a state of being that I strive to be more and more of my day, which I'm not that way all day. I fail at it. Is a state of humility where it's sort of a state of it's a state of consciousness. It's not about subservience. It's not about being embarrassed. It's not about not having a skill or adequacy in something, and it's not about other people. Though it can have an effect on other people. If a person's humble and kind and loving, then it's obviously going to affect every relationship they're around. But there's something that happens when our consciousness, in response to life, just like this river, my consciousness in response to this river, on different levels is humble or experiencing humility. Let's take one area that I feel humbled by this river is that its sheer power. Like if I was to be in this river would just wash me easily away down the river. Its coldness would probably give me hypothermia this time of year. And so its sheer power, the nature of its self is powerful. And I physically feel humbled in its presence. Another level of my humility towards this river is just the sheer beauty of its very nature. The fact that it's so beautiful and interesting to look at. The fact that it goes down between these mountains and is carving its way, and has for hundreds of years. The fact that it allows life to grow within it is incredibly beautiful and majestic. And I'm humbled at the river from that context as well. I'm also humbled by the fact that the river is a great place for the fish to hide and live, which makes it hard for me to catch them. The river's not working in cooperation with me, it's working in cooperation with the fish, because those are the inhabitants of the river. Now, it doesn't mind me being here fishing, it just does its river thing around my hook and line and doesn't seem to care. Another wonderful thing about the river is that if I wanted, I could drink the water. I could even bathe in it to get cleaned up. I could use it to water plants. I could use it for entertainment. I could go down in a raft, get a little boat or whatever, or what do you call it, a kayak, and I get to fish on it. So I have a lot of humility towards this river, and part of it not only are those points, but part of it is that I don't have any judgment regarding the river. So I'm not trying to assess the river's value or skill set based on my own, because I know that innately I just know that there's no comparison between the river and myself. We're two completely different experiences within this life. And so because there's no competition, there's no way to leg up the river, right? I am able to be in its presence without any judgment. And so I wonder how we can apply this towards other people. If I'm in the presence of someone else and I recognize that they are innately their own being, and that what they think, say, do, feel, whatever, is their own expression within life, and everything that they decide to do is okay, then I don't have any judgment toward the other person. I can allow them to exist just as I allow this river to exist, being itself. So whether I agree with the person or not is irrelevant. Let's say that you are a staunch, okay, let's pick food. Let's say that you're a vegetarian. Let's go the full way. Let's say that you're a raw vegan. I was that once. And so you don't eat any cooked food, and you only eat fruits and vegetables raw. That's it. Nothing cooked, and certainly no meat. And you meet somebody who is a heavy meat eater. They're a hunter, or they have a ranch with cattle. They harvest food, and they love to eat meat, and they live on a carnivore diet, right? So let's say that I was the carnivore. Now, if I'm exhibiting one aspect of humility, and that's just to allow another being to just be who they are, then I could communicate with this other person and no matter what they expressed as far as their own opinions about whatever, I could just allow them to be. But let's say that I was the raw vegan, and that just didn't work for me. People killing and eating animals was either harmful, disgusting, bad for the planet, or whatever. Things that I thought of when I was a raw vegan. Those concepts and my attachment to them, or my inability to separate my own personal viewpoints and the sanctity of another being, if I couldn't keep those things separate, then I would judge another person. I might say, oh my gosh, they cook corn. That's horrible. That's disgusting. The poor corn, it's getting cooked. You should only eat it raw. And so I wouldn't be able to experience or express humility towards the other person, because my judgment is getting in the way. As long as there's judgment, then we can't really exist in the state of humility, I don't think. And I don't think we can exist truly in unconditional love or kindness if we're judging other people. This is the hardest lesson that I've had to learn, and that's about myself, in that I realized that I couldn't really love myself or be kind to myself until I let go of my own judgments about myself. And I had a lot of judgments, and they were very well structured within my consciousness as far as how I defended those beliefs and observations. My observation of how I acted in the past, being judgmental, expressing myself negatively, making decisions that were poor decisions, and all the rest. You convince yourself at some point that there's something wrong with you, and there may be something wrong. There may be what may need to happen is that you grow consciously as an individual, and so you have to go through that long, arduous process of coming to terms with everything in your life. And then you can express more unconditional love and kindness towards yourself. But within that spectrum of beliefs and judgments and the road of freedom of being loving and kind, there's the journey of learning humility. Because even to examine ourselves and figure out who we truly are, or what we're thinking or doing or believing, requires a lot of humility. We have to be willing to do that. If we're not willing, then we'll just keep being the character we've decided we are, and and so we just continue. But we also continue with whatever that ego is designed around. If it's designed around, judgment, anger, suspicious attitudes, selfishness, basically all the fears, all the types of fears that we can have, right? So as long as we're living in fear, then we can't really live truthfully in love and kindness, but humility can start to guide us there. If we're willing, in a moment, usually when we experience humility, is when we're suffering a challenge or some sort of pain. Like, I think it was Buddha said something to the effect that humans basically learn through the process of pain or through the acclamation of understanding. So in other words, you can observe someone and just do as they do, and if they're a kind, loving person, You can be kind and loving. If you observe them enough and they're a good example, you can model their behavior. That's acquisition of understanding. Or, and that's what happens for a lot of people because they have good role models. Or if you work at a company and you had bad, characteristics as an employee before, but everybody in the company that you are just started to get, work for is just a model employee, it'll rub off on you because you'll feel bad that you're showing up late, or that your clothes aren't ironed, or that you forget to take notes, or whatever the case is. Your habits, your own habits, start to evolve because of the modeling around you. Now, if they don't, obviously you don't fit in, and they'll either fire you or you'll quit because you can't stand being around people that are so different from yourself. But humility, I caught some moth there. Humility can help us with our willingness to examine ourselves. People who have experienced trauma, whether it's in war or some other trauma in families, friends, school, life experiences, that trauma can sometimes underline experiences or viewpoints that you had before that. So, let's say if a person's always short-tempered and impatient, well, if they get in a car wreck and, break both their legs and they can't walk for a couple weeks or whatever, a couple months maybe, their whole process through the recovery might be very angry and upset all the time because that's the way they were before the accident happened. Or they might respond in a different way. They might respond through humility and realize, you know what, as long as I've been in this hospital, I've been nothing but rude and mean to all the doctors and nurses, and that's why they stopped coming around. Maybe I should look at my life differently and start to appreciate, that I got two legs that once they're healed, I can walk again, So humility can help direct us out of thought processes, belief systems, emotional blocks that we have. And those things lie within the spectrum of our consciousness on a daily basis, but we're always pushing them to the background. We don't have a subconscious mind that's programmed that turns us into a robot and, then we're going to go act out these things. No, the things are there. It's just that we're so good at repressing things that we just push them to the background. Just like if you're in a conversation, if you're on a school bus, or let's just say a city bus. Let's say you're on a city bus, and the whole bus in the back, and 3/4 of the bus is full of a bunch of college students, and they're all laughing and talking really loud and yelling, but you're trying to have a conversation with somebody next to you just met on the bus, and you're sitting in the front. Now you could stand up and tell all the kids to shut up or be quiet, or you could tell the bus driver, hey, would you tell those kids to pipe down? Or you could go back there and be nice to them and say, hey, I appreciate you guys all having fun and stuff, but I was wondering if you keep the sound down. But what most people do, let's say there's a noisy situation and you meet somebody or somebody's with you and you want to talk to them, what most people do is develop in that moment a skill or an ability that we all have, and that's where you block out all the noise around you and you focus on the conversation that you're having with the person next to you. And that's what we typically do. We typically just shift our consciousness so that we can totally hone in on what this person right next to us is saying, even though there's all kinds of noise going on in the background. And we can do it. Now, there are other times we can't. Maybe it's too noisy. So then we decide usually, okay, well, we'll wait till we get off the bus and then we'll talk, right? That's typically what we do. People don't typically stand up on the bus and tell the kids to be quiet. I mean, maybe the teacher does. The teacher might say, "Hey, you guys, pipe down. You know, there's other people on the bus," because that's their job, and it's within the framework of what they're doing. So they don't feel embarrassed doing that. But most people on the bus, you know, that aren't the teacher would never do that because, well, they'd be embarrassed. So that's how our consciousness can sort of push part of itself away from the focus of our present moment. And that's what humility can do. Humility is asking the question, well, you know, am I right? Or is my view of this right? Or am I making, or did I make a good decision? Or is there a better way I can view this? Or is there a way I can get some insight from somebody else regarding this? I mean, it's all these different cognitive approaches to trying to examine the situation better, you know? Like if you fall on your face during a volleyball game, you immediately ask yourself, okay, what did I do how did I mess up? Oh, that's right, I was running too fast and one foot got in front of the other, and I'm wearing the shoes that are a little big on me, and I tripped and I fell on my face. So you figure it out in that moment of humility where you're open to any ideas because you want to solve it so that you can go back to being normal and not embarrassed. Or maybe you're looking at another player and, you know, you're paying attention and you fell over. Who knows? There's a lot of reasons why we can fall and fall flat on our face. But humility can help us a lot. This river as a metaphor, it's, you know, we think of a river as a very powerful thing, and it is. It can carve right through canyon. I mean, it creates canyons. Look at the Grand Canyon. This river has been gouging out a valley through these mountains for probably thousands of years. And this river, yes, could just sweep me right down, miles down the stream. I mean, there's a lot of power in a river. But this river is actually yielding to everything around it. It's being very humble. The landscape, as I've mentioned before, is sloped. So it's just following what the land is telling it to do. It's just going with it. And then the other aspect is gravity. So between the slope and gravity, this river really has no control where it's going. All the water, it comes down from the mountains, it goes into this river, and it just continues for miles and miles and miles until I think this connects with the Columbia, and then it connects to the ocean. And that's pretty humble. Because the river, every time it turns one of these corners down here, you know, it doesn't know, like the part of the river that's up there as it travels down here, it doesn't know what's around the corner. It's never been around the corner. Every droplet of water upstream has never been down there. And so it finds out, oh wow, there's a big drop. There's a 3-foot drop or 10-foot drop. Or there's a sharp corner we have to go around. Or there's a bunch of logs in the river or a bunch of rocks. And it has to yield. It has to yield to the flow of the land and gravity. And, you know, I listen a lot to Thomas Campbell, and I used to listen to a lot of different teachers. And I've never gotten as much out of them as I have gotten out of Tom Campbell, because his his scientific approach to consciousness and his experiences and experiments that he's done for decades has basically solidified and put together everything so that it really makes sense. And one of the end conclusions he arrived at was life was about love. It's about, accepting that we can be loving and we can be kind, and that if we are, it's actually fundamentally a very basic structural aspect of consciousness itself. Because the more loving and kind we become, the more willing, the more humble we are. Our willingness increases to broaden our understanding. We broaden our understanding of ourselves and why we make the decisions we have or do or whatever or will. And it helps us understand how life can be easier when we are loving and we are kind. And a big aspect of that is being willing to humble ourselves throughout the day and just try to stay open. Well, just stay open to allowing things to happen instead of trying to control. Like if I jump in this river right now and I try to control where this river's flowing, it'd be pretty much a hopeless effort. I mean, I could probably push some of the water around for a little while, but most of my energy is gonna, be focused on keeping myself afloat, right? Because it's pretty deep out there, and I'm really not going to accomplish much of anything. The water's just going to go around me and continue going down the hill. But if I am willing to just, and that could be a metaphor for life, things can happen during the day or during the night or whatever, as we live our lives. Things are going to happen. But if I'm open and just observant of it and not try to control it, then the momentum of whatever's happening will just flow around me, but I can choose whether it flows through me from the position of whether I resist it or try to control it, or whether I just allow it to be and accept that everything will continue to feel good and be good in the moment, as long as I'm willing to just let go and deeply feel my intuitive guidance while balancing that with just analytical understanding, logic. So if I'm on a surfboard on this river, then intuitively I know the river's going to carry me the direction of the river. Well, plus that's common sense. But as I flex on that board going down the river, my intuition's going to kind of guide me like, oh, there might be something there. And sure enough, there was a rock there or something unseen. But your intuition can guide you along. And then your logic can say, okay, well, if I want to continue this way, maybe I should stay in the middle of the river, stay away from rocks, and I can just ride this all the way to the ocean if I want for the next 5 days. Or, which obviously wouldn't happen. I've never heard of a surfer doing that. But my point is that, or we could try to resist, as we're on that surfboard, we're trying to control a lot where we're going. But I've seen people in kayaks. I haven't done this a whole lot myself, but I've seen people in kayaks and small boats, and it seems to be that most of the time they allow the river to carry them, and then they use their logic and their understanding and reason to put their paddle in and kind of guide themselves around the rocks as they go. But intuitively, they know that the river's got a momentum itself, and that if they're staying in this sort of flow state, just like athletes do, or a person who's doing something repetitive that they enjoy, like knitting, picking, or working in the garden or whatever, drawing a picture, that you're just going to let the inertia of that flow carry you because your intuition's guiding you, right? So humility helps with that, I believe. Humility is a willingness to be open in the moment to both intuition and logic, and just allow a nice, sweet spot of understanding to arise within the juxtaposition of those two things. So anyway, that's one talk about humility today. I might talk about it again another time. I'm just learning more and more as I continue to insert the desire to grow up and become more loving and kind, that humility actually helps to sort of decompress the moment. It helps open up the possibilities. It helps invite this balance between intuition and logic, and it just sort of opens all the doors. Like, well, you know, this is the present. This moment is here, and let's just embrace what happens. So thanks for stopping by my channel. The Coherence Path, all roads lead to you. And if you want to subscribe, that would be great. That means that you want to hear more videos, and I'll continue to do them. If you have an idea for a video, then write it in the comments. If you want to be on, you know, maybe this channel or my other channel, the What Was Seen, that's my other channel about unusual experiences that I've had, and I'm hoping to interview people who have had their own. Then yeah, send me an email and we could set up a time to talk over the phone, or Skype, or however we do it. If you live in the Oregon or Portland, Oregon area, we could do a face-to-face. That'd be fun. Maybe out here at the river or someplace you enjoy. And then I am opening the door to doing some coaching, but I'm sort of formulating and identifying what other people might want. My focus is about becoming more coherent as an individual, just being simpler in just focusing on the simplicity of just being more in the present moment, focusing on how to be loving and be kind in the moment and throughout the day, and how being coherent translates to everything you do. I found that it applies to everything. When I used to, there's a lot of things that I've experienced, or anyway, a lot of things that I've experienced that have given me these little moments of coherence. Like teaching Tai Chi was one of them. Whenever I did Tai Chi, I just felt in this beautiful flow and coherence, and there was only the present moment. I experience that when I paint, when I meditate. So, but I believe that this state of coherence can be learned and incorporated into our day, throughout our day, no matter what we're doing. Sort of like a walking meditation. And some of the pillar principles of it is being loving and being kind and being humble and just being in the present moment. So anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by. I didn't catch any fish, but the fish are having fun, I'm sure, without me. So thanks again, and I'll see you another video maybe.